Ma'am, you need to wake up. We have an emergency.
She wasn't supposed to be noticed today. The last thing Kamara Johnson wanted was to be crammed into a narrow seat with strangers breathing recycled air, listening to the hum of an aircraft she wasn't in control of. But her mother's voice on the phone had been enough. "Baby, you need to come home. Don't let the past keep you wandering forever." So she booked the flight. Window seat, no checked luggage, hoodie zipped up, cap pulled low. She just wanted to disappear into anonymity, at least for the duration of the journey. The engines roared, the plane lifted, and Kamara felt the familiar pull of gravity fighting her body. Most people barely noticed it, but for her, every second in the air awakened memories she tried to bury. She shut her eyes. No more missions, no more skies, just peace, just sleep. She drifted off, lulled by the steady rhythm of altitude. If peace were a thing you could order, she'd paid for it. If invisibility had a seat assignment, she'd claimed it. The past, she told herself, could stay where it belonged, behind her. The first jolt was small, just a shrug in the fuselage, a friendly bump that made ice cubes clatter and nervous chuckles pop like bubble wrap. A baby startled, then settled. Someone muttered, "Bumpy patch," with the false comfort of a weather forecast. The second jolt was not friendly. It hit hard enough to rattle the overhead bins and slap a paperback into the aisle. A flight attendant, name tag Heather Jones, caught herself on a headrest and flashed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then the intercom crackled, and the voice that came through was wrong. "Ladies and gentlemen." It wavered. Men like him aren't supposed to waver. "This is your captain, Captain Douglas Mason. If there is any fighter pilot on board, please come forward immediately." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. "Fighter pilot?" Someone breathed. "What does that even mean? Oh God!" The plane shivered again, longer, lower, like a warning rumbling up from the bones of the metal. Seatbelts tightened. Armrests found new fingerprints. "Just before we get back to it, it's good to have you here again. This is the Black Voice Matters Stories. Tap subscribe and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Then hold tight, because what happens next will have you gripping your seat." The captain returned. Urgency cranked a notch. "This is not a drill. If you have fighter pilot training, identify yourself now. Time is critical." The cabin broke. A child cried, and then another. A man in 14B Navy suit, jaw set, name later learned to be Gregory Shaw, gripped his armrest so hard his knuckles blanched. A woman whispered a prayer into trembling fingers. The air turned hot with breath and fear. Kamara's eyes opened. She didn't register panic first, she registered data. Engine pitch steady, cabin pressure normal, crew moving but shaken, passengers unraveling. Her hood shaded her eyes, but training turns the world bright no matter how dark you make it. Heather hustled past, eyes scanning faces like they might glow with answers. When her gaze brushed 14A, she stuttered. Just a fraction. Recognition, maybe. Doubt, definitely. She moved on too quickly for comfort. Another jolt. This one shoved the cabin a few inches left and right like a cheap carnival ride. Luggage kisses the ceiling in moments like this. A roller bag thudded into the aisle. A plastic cup skated. Gregory found his voice the way some people find trouble. "This is ridiculous," he announced, just loud enough for 2 rows to join in. He cut a look at Kamara like the storm had crawled out of her carry-on. If someone knows what they're doing, now would be a great time. Kamara lifted her head. Her hood slipped back an inch, just enough to show a pair of eyes that didn't rattle easy. "Then let them speak," she said, calm as a held breath. That quiet knocked his volume down. Funny how steadiness steals oxygen from panic. The intercom popped a third time. All veneer gone. "If there is any fighter pilot on board, identify yourself immediately. We don't have long." A rosary clicked. A teenager's tick-tock blessed the algorithm with a shaky frame of ceiling panels. The aisle light felt like a spotlight searching for a hero. Heather stopped at row 14, crouched to brace herself, and lowered her voice. "Ma'am, I have to ask, do you have any aviation background?" The question dropped like glass in water. Heads turned. Doubt sharpened into a new kind of quiet. "She doesn't look like a pilot," someone whispered. "God help us if she is," another whispered back. Kamara could have waited, could have let the plane find a different story to tell. But the captain's last word, urgent, was still shaking the air. "Yes," she said. Heather blinked, relief and fear colliding behind her eyes. "What kind of—" "Not here," Kamara said. "Get me to the front." Gregory half rose, outrage auditioning for leadership. Hold on, we're just going to what? Let a stranger. Sit down, sir, Heather snapped, quicker and sharper than anyone expected. Clear the aisle. He froze, stunned by the tone he usually wielded. Kamara unlatched her belt, stood. The hoodie slid to her shoulders like a skin she no longer needed. She didn't loom. She didn't posture. She just stood like gravity preferred her. Name, Heather whispered, almost involuntarily, like the word had escaped. Kamara met her eyes. Captain Kamara Johnson, United States Air Force, former F-16. The cabin inhaled at once. A baby stopped mid-cry. Someone's prayer turned into a thank you they weren't brave enough to say aloud. Gregory's mouth opened and failed to find English. Another shove from the sky reminded the room that hope doesn't fly planes, pilots do. Heather straightened. Captain Johnson, this way. She threw a command to the cabin. Remain seated. Clear the aisle now. They moved forward. Kamara and Heather, past faces rearranging themselves in real time, suspicion melting to shock, shock to belief, belief to something like apology. The path opened without anyone deciding to open it. Near the galley, Heather's hand hovered near the reinforced door. Close up, fear has a smell. Coffee does too. The two mixed into a scent Kamara would remember later. He's never sounded like this, Heather whispered, eyes on the door. Captain Mason. I've flown with him 3 years. Kamara rapped twice on the metal, a rhythm most passengers never hear, and pilots never forget. The latch cycled. The door cracked. Captain Mason's face appeared, paper pale, eyes wider than training manuals prefer, sweat at the temples. Beside him, First Officer Patel played a silent piano across glass and light, altitude, attitude, a moving constellation of numbers. Mason saw Kamara, and something in his face loosened by a single degree. Tell me I'm not dreaming, he said, voice hoarse. You're awake, she answered simply. Let me help you stay that way. He opened the door. The door sealed behind her with a submarine kiss. Inside, the world sharpened. Altitude tapes breathing. Attitude indicators steady but twitchy at the edges. TKS icons blinking in and out like shy fireflies. Weather painting green and yellow strokes across the nav display. Mason's left hand hovered near the thrust levers, close enough to count as comfort, far enough to count as restraint. What have you got? Kamara asked, buckling into the jump seat without looking at the latch. Primary systems nominal, Mason said, fast but clear. Autopilot kicked out 3 times in 6 minutes. We're seeing intermittent returns at 10 to 11 o'clock, 5 to 8 miles, no squawk. ATC thinks we fat-fingered a code. We didn't. Visual, Kamara asked. Patel shook his head. Negative. Sun angles garbage. We saw a glint maybe. Could have been anything. RT quality? Mason toggled a switch. A thin hiss threaded the room like someone breathing through a straw. Riding the carrier, then ducking us when we call. Kamara leaned over the scope. The blip wasn't a blip. It was a flinch. There. Not there. There again, a hair left. Speed. Shadowing our changes, Patel said. We eased to Mach 78. So did they. We held altitude after the first disconnect. They dipped 100 and came back. Hand flying, Kamara murmured. Sloppy correction. You think it's a... Mason started. Let's not name it yet, she said. Naming things gives them teeth. She rolled her shoulders once. Old checklists rose like constellations she'd memorized in another life. Patel. Scrub 10 knots and give me 1 degree left. Smooth. Paint it like a curve a child wouldn't notice. He did. The return twitched with them, stayed, wagged. Okay, Kamara said. 1 degree right plus 200 feet on the VS. Don't be polite. Autopilot chirped its discontent and ceded. Mason took the yoke with ounces, not pounds. The return dipped with them. Overshot. Corrected. Human hands. Not weather. Not a balloon, Kamara said. He's watching us. He. Mason echoed. They. She corrected herself, though her gut had already used the first word. The interphone buzzed. Heather's whisper. Captain. The cabin needs an update, and the gentleman in 14B is loud. Mason pinched the bridge of his nose. Tell him I said to breathe. Heather hesitated. He says a stranger is flying the plane now. Kamara almost smiled. Tell him a pilot is. The blip brightened, less shy, more bold. 8 o'clock, 6 miles, closing. The radio hiss sharpened, then cut out. Silence did what it always does, made everything else louder. Do we have company? Patel asked, voice small despite itself. Kamara didn't answer with words. She listened to the airframe, to the radios, to the memory that had put knots in her shoulders for years. Recognition crawled up her spine, unwelcome and undeniable. The way a gate tells you who's coming before you see the face. Set a phantom altitude hold 200 up, she said. Trip it 5 seconds. He did. The return bobbled, then overcorrected again like a runner tripping on a curb he swore wasn't there. Got you, she whispered. Friend, Mason asked. She didn't look up. We'll see. Outside the cockpit, the cabin wore fear like a uniform. Inside, the math deepened, weather stacked, mottled green smears resolving into a bruise across their path. The plane flexed under a lateral gust, seat tracks groaned. Somewhere aft, a lullaby rose and fell, the kind people sing to machines when they forget machines don't listen. A click, a breath, a voice, thin as thread. Hell low. Mason's eyes snapped to the audio panel. Patel's hand hovered over transmit. Kamara held up 2 fingers. Wait. Again the whisper. Not on frequency this time. Closer. A flick at the edge of the left window, too smooth to be cloud, too quick to be a trick of light. Gone as soon as someone's brain decided it had seen it. Tell me that was glare, Mason said. I don't write fairy tales, Kamara said. What do I tell the cabin? He sounded like a man who'd spent every coin of calm he had and was checking pockets for change. Tell them the bravest order you can give, she said. Sit still. He nodded, thumbed the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We're experiencing intermittent avionics issues and a patch of weather ahead. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We'll update you shortly. He clicked off and grimaced. They'll smell the half-truth. It's not a lie, Kamara said. It's the piece they can carry without dropping. The return on the scope flared again. 5 miles. Then 4. Closing. Patel swallowed. We're running out of space. We're running out of guessing, Kamara said. She breathed in to account she didn't have to count anymore. The cockpit shrank to the size of what mattered. Airspeed, attitude, altitude, a ghost with bad manners, a crew that needed to borrow her spine. Okay, she said, eyes softening the way they do when you stop looking and start seeing. Let's say hello. She keyed the mic, voice level. Board, even. Traffic at 8 o'clock, 5 miles, no squawk. Identify. Silence. A hiss. A half-formed syllable. Then nothing. Again, she said. Same tone. Traffic 8 o'clock, 4 miles. Identify or divert. A beat. 2. Then the radio carried a sound that didn't make sense because fear rarely speaks clearly. A laugh cut short, a breath cut shorter. The metallic click of someone unmuting and regretting it. Copy your position, a voice said at last. Accent sanded down by bad equipment. Do not alter course. Mason shot her a look. He's giving orders. He's testing range, Kamara said. And courage. Whose? Everyone's. The plane rolled half a degree right and back. An animal shaking off a fly. Outside, cloud tops piled higher. Inside, the list of things left unsaid grew heavy. Back in row 14, Gregory Shaw had used up his commentary and moved into that quiet men find when they realize volume can't arm wrestle physics. Around him, passengers clutched hands that didn't belong to them an hour ago. The story had stopped being about individual seats and started being about one body with 100 heartbeats. Heather's whisper returned on the interphone. Captain, they can feel something out there. So can we, Mason said. A new tone chimed. Low, mean, designed by engineers to be impossible to ignore without admitting you were ignoring it. Proximity flirted with warning. Kamara's mouth turned to a line. There, she said softly. We have company off the left wing. Mason hit the PA, voice stripped of ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. We have traffic in close proximity. The cabin went still. The kind of still that makes a plane feel like a church. Kamara set her palms lightly on her thighs, an old habit that told her body what her mind already knew. You're here, you're steady, you're enough. Outside the glass, a shadow tested the edge of sight, then slipped away like a dare. Kamara didn't blink. Okay, she whispered. Not to Mason, not to Patel, to the sky itself. Show me what you want. The words hit the cabin like lightning. We have company off the left wing. It didn't sound like a routine announcement. Not like weather, not like turbulence. It sounded like a confession, ripped from the captain's throat. The cabin froze. Then it broke. Phones shot up, recording. Gasps turned into shrieks. A woman clutched her child so tight the boy yelped. A man in row 20 pressed his face to the window, then jerked back, shouting, "There's something out there!" And that was all it took. The panic ignited. "Are we being hijacked? It's a missile! Oh my God, it's a missile!" Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Heather, the flight attendant, fought her way up the aisle, palms out like she could push the fear back into the seats. "Everyone, please remain calm. Stay seated." No one listened. Phones buzzed as passengers live-streamed, their shaky voices narrating the chaos. "Flight 327, something's outside. The captain just said we're not alone." The sound of crying children bled into the background, amplifying the hysteria. And then came Gregory Shaw. Always the loudest voice when fear needs fuel. He shot up from 14B, face flushed crimson, tie askew. "This is insane," he bellowed, loud enough to drown the sobs. "We're letting a stranger into the cockpit while there's a hostile outside? Are you people blind? She could be part of this." All eyes snapped to 14A, Kamara's empty seat. Whispers turned sharp. "He's right. Where did she go?" "She just disappeared into the cockpit." "How do we know we can trust her?" Heather spun, snapping at Gregory. "Sit down!" But he was already pointing toward the sealed cockpit door. "That woman, what's her name? Johnson? You think it's a coincidence she's on this flight when some shadow plane shows up? She doesn't look like a pilot. She looks like—" He never finished. A woman in 15C cut him off, shouting through her tears, "Shut up, do you want us all dead?" Gregory's voice cracked, but his words had already taken root. Suspicion spreads faster than fire in a cabin full of fear. Beyond the reinforced door, the air was tighter, but calmer. Captain Mason gripped the yoke, sweat beading along his brow. 2 miles, closing, left wing, low. First Officer Patel's eyes darted across the scope. Still no squawk. Whoever it is, they're silent. And there, in the jump seat, Kamara Johnson leaned forward, eyes locked on the ghost creeping closer on radar. Her voice was steady, her tone surgical. "He's shadowing, hand flying. See the overcorrections?" Patel nodded, swallowing hard. "Sloppy, but intentional." "Exactly." Kamara's jaw tightened. Whoever it is, they want to be seen, they're sending a message. Mason's knuckles whitened. "Well, the passengers already got it. They're losing their minds back there." "Good," Kamara said flatly. "Fear will keep them seated." She shifted closer to the radar. "Give me a 10-knot scrub. Let's see if he follows." Patel eased the throttle. The blip twitched, matched, held. Kamara exhaled. "He's locked on us." Back in the cabin, chaos reached its peak when a teenager by the window screamed, "I see it, I see it!" Dozens of heads whipped toward the left side of the plane, phones pressed to glass, and then they saw it. A shadow, sleek and metallic, skimming the edge of the clouds. Too close, too deliberate. For a heartbeat, the sunlight glinted across its body, revealing wings angled like blades. Passengers gasped in unison. A woman shrieked. Someone dropped their phone, the thud swallowed by rising screams. "It's another plane. They're going to hit us." "God, save us!" Heather shouted into the intercom. "Captain, they see it!" And that's when fear mutated into something worse. Gregory's voice boomed again, trembling but vicious. "Don't you see? She's working with them. She disappears into the cockpit, and suddenly this phantom shows up. Open your eyes." His words hit hard. Some passengers nodded. Some turned their fear into glares at the cockpit door. Kamara's name, once whispered in awe, was now poisoned with doubt. "Johnson. That's what she said, right? Johnson. What if he's right? What if she's not who she says she is? What if she brought them?" Heather slammed her hand against a seat back. "Enough." Her voice cracked. "She's the only reason we're still alive right now." But the damage was done. Suspicion had planted itself. Inside the cockpit, alarms chirped. Patel's voice broke. "Proximity alert. He's closing fast." On the radar, the shadow lunged, closing the gap in seconds. The blip flashed, screamed, then steadied again just a breath away. Passengers saw it too. The rogue aircraft tilted, rolling close enough that its dark underbelly stretched across their windows like a predator showing its teeth. Gasps turned to raw screams. "Brace!" someone shouted. "They're going to ram us." Kamara's hand shot out, steady against the panel. "No, not yet." Mason whipped his head toward her. "Not yet. That was an attack run." Her eyes narrowed. That was a warning. The cockpit fell silent. And then the rogue plane banked hard, vanishing into the clouds with a roar. But everyone knew it wasn't gone. It was circling. Kamara's voice was calm, but her eyes told another story. He's testing us, pushing us towards something, and I don't think he's working alone. Mason's throat tightened. What are you saying? Kamara looked past him, toward the sealed cabin door. I'm saying the real threat might already be inside this plane. The alarms shrieked. Dear God! A woman wailed, rocking her sobbing child in row 18. They're going to kill us, shouted a man clutching the seat back so hard his wedding ring cut his finger. Phones were everywhere, filming, live streaming, recording, feeding the panic back into itself in endless loops of what if and we're doomed. And then, right on cue, Gregory Shaw stood again. Red-faced, trembling with equal parts terror and arrogance, he jabbed a finger toward the sealed cockpit door. This is her fault, he barked. His voice cracked but carried anyway. That woman, what did she say her name was? Johnson? She's no pilot. She's a fraud. She's working with them. Gasps spread like sparks. Heads turned, faces pinched in suspicion. Heather, gripping the intercom like a lifeline, spun on him. Sir, sit down. No, Gregory roared, his voice rising over the crying children. The alarm still fading in the background. We let her in there, and now look what's happening. A phantom jet out of nowhere, circling us like a vulture. You think that's a coincidence? He laughed bitterly, a sound born of fear. Wake up! She brought them here. The murmurs grew teeth. She's right there in the cockpit. How did she even know to stand up? Too convenient, if you ask me. Fear curdled into prejudice, prejudice into accusation. Heather slammed her hand against the nearest seat back, eyes blazing. That woman is the only one in this cabin who knows what she's doing. She's not our enemy, she's our only chance of survival. But her voice cracked, and doubt slipped through the fissure. Gregory seized it. Open your eyes, they're playing us, she's up there feeding them information right now. A teenage boy filming whispered into his phone. They're saying the black lady's working with the rogue jet. His live stream ticked higher in viewers by the second. Kamara Johnson's name, her identity, was already leaking into the digital bloodstream as both hope and threat. Behind the locked door, Kamara ignored the weight of every suspicion pressing against her from the cabin. She leaned forward, eyes fixed on the radar, reading the blip like a second language. Captain Mason's face was wet with sweat. His voice was tight. That was a collision pass. He's insane. No, Kamara corrected, voice steady. That was measured. He wanted us to feel the air shake, not break. First Officer Patel wiped his palms on his trousers, eyes darting. Then what's the point? What does he want? Kamara didn't answer immediately. She studied the rogue's pattern, the sharp bank, the overshoot, the re-entry into cloud cover. Her jaw tightened. This isn't a drone, she said finally. It's a man, hand flying, testing us. Patel's throat bobbed. Testing for what? To see if we panic, she murmured. Her gaze sharpened, old instincts firing awake in her chest. Or to see if I'm still who I used to be. Mason shot her a look. You know this pilot? The cockpit went quiet. Kamara's eyes stayed on the blip. I know the moves, the handwriting in the sky, she exhaled slowly. And I think he knows me. As if on cue, the radio crackled alive. Static hissed, sharp and ugly, filling the cockpit. Mason flinched. Patel reached instinctively for the volume, and then a voice slithered through. Warped by distance and bad equipment, but undeniably human. She knows who I am. 3 seconds of silence followed, thick as tar. Mason's eyes darted to Kamara. What the hell does that mean? Patel's hand shook on the throttle. He's talking about her. Kamara said nothing. Not yet. Her face was carved from stone, but her pulse thudded hot in her ears. That voice, the cadence, the cruel familiarity, wasn't just a pilot. It was a ghost, rising out of a grave she thought she'd buried years ago. The radio cut to static again, leaving the cockpit in a stunned hush. Heather's voice quivered as she tried to calm the passengers. Everyone, please, stay seated. We are handling the situation. But Gregory Shaw had already seized the cabin like a stage. You heard that voice, he shouted, his eyes wild. He's talking about her. He said she knows him. This is proof she's in on it. Passengers gasped. Some shouted agreement. Others cursed him for stoking fear. The cabin turned into a court, divided down the middle, half ready to condemn, half clinging to the fragile thread of belief in the woman behind the cockpit door. A mother clutched her child, whispering, I don't care if she's the devil herself, if she lands us safely. But another man muttered, she's the reason we're in danger in the first place. Near the rear of the cabin, a young man hunched low, whispering into a small device cupped in his hands. His lips moved quickly, eyes darting around to make sure no one saw. But one passenger did. An older woman across the aisle frowned, leaning in. What are you doing? The young man jolted, shoving the device into his pocket. Nothing, praying. But her eyes narrowed. She knew the difference between prayer and a secret. She opened her mouth to shout, only for the rogue aircraft to slam back into view outside, silencing her with sheer terror. The alarms shrieked louder this time. The rogue jet dove at them head-on, slicing so close across their nose that passengers screamed, feeling the vibration in their teeth. Windows rattled, lights flickered. Mason yanked the yoke, Patel calling out numbers he barely registered. He's insane, Mason barked. No, Kamara corrected sharply, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. He's hunting. He won't kill us yet. Not until he gets what he wants. Patel's voice cracked. And what is that? Kamara's jaw set, her gaze never leaving the blip circling them like a shark. Me. The word dropped like a stone in water, rippling through the cockpit, through the cabin, through the story itself. The rogue plane streaked past their windows again, this time flashing a mark on its tail, a symbol Kamara recognized instantly, one that tied directly to her past. Her breath caught, her body stiffened. She whispered only to herself, but the cockpit heard. It can't be him. The cockpit felt smaller now, like the sky had leaned in to listen. Kamara kept her eyes on the scope, but her pulse was elsewhere. Caught in a tangle of images the present had dragged up from years she promised herself she'd never revisit. The rogue jet's tail mark, angular, black, unmistakable, seared across her memory like a brand. Mason noticed the change in her breath before she spoke. Captain Johnson, he said carefully. What did you recognize? Her jaw worked once. A squadron mark. It was unofficial, painted on a few tails overseas. We called them the stray dogs. They called themselves something else. Her eyes narrowed. They flew dirty. Close passes. Psychological games. They wanted you rattled before they wanted you down. Patel glanced at the display, voice thin. So they know you? They knew our team, she said. They knew our tactics. And one of them, she stopped, just a second too long. One of them liked to play personal. The radio hissed, as if responding to his cue. Silence followed, a loud, intentional silence. Mason exhaled, knuckles still pale on the yoke. We need the rest, Captain. Anything that helps me keep 200 souls alive. Kamara's eyes stayed on the ghost, as she let the past lay itself down next to the present. Like two transparencies, edges aligning against her will. There had been another cockpit, another hum, another captain who didn't stutter when he said her name the first time. The world was beige desert and blue flame then, everything smelling like heat and adrenaline. She remembered pre-flights done by touch, the checklist living inside her hands. She remembered strapping in and feeling the aircraft settle around her like it had been waiting for her spine. She also remembered the other things, the ones pilots didn't put in their logbooks. A CO who called her kid long after she outranked half his favorites. A 4-ship brief where her plan held, then flew, then won, only to land and watch the credit drift toward the loudest jaw in the room. She remembered being the first in a dozen ways, and how first quietly carried only, and how only slowly learned to answer to never again. And she remembered him. They only called him Dare on radio, short for something she never got to hear in full. He flew like he was born sideways, rolling into merges a fraction late, then stealing the fight with a swaggering flick that wasn't in any manual. He loved proximity like other men loved applause. He got close enough to read your helmet art and leave without a scratch just to remind you he could. 8 months into a deployment that ate calendars for breakfast, he started calling her by a name she hadn't given him. Hello, Ghost. The first time she thought it was a glitch. The second time she knew he had a taste for theater. By the fifth she knew he had done his homework. Ghost was the call sign a flight lead threw at her in a bar. Half compliment, half dare to be seen after she took a sortie from hopeless to textbook with no one on the ground noticing the hands that had saved it. Ghosts are useful. Ghosts are also easy to pretend you never saw. Dare liked to drag her into verticals that tested bone and blood oxygen, taunting her on guard with little laughs when she mirrored him perfectly. The last time she heard him was the day a training run turned into a rescue tasking, and her wingman took a piece of metal he didn't deserve. Kamara had run the intercept, pulled Dare off the formation by half a mile, and lived through a knife fight at sea level that ended with her on the right side of the horizon and him a smear of noise. He punched out. He lived. He disappeared. She rotated stateside into a boardroom full of men who used the words incident review like a lockpick. They asked questions that weren't questions about judgment, about tone, about whether her presence escalated situations. She realized that the sky would always love her back, but some rooms never had. So she left, honorably, quietly, before the anger hardened into something that would devour more than her career. Ghost learned how to breathe on the ground, till a tail mark in a sunshot window told her the sky hadn't learned how to let her go. He uses close passes to get in your head, Kamara said, voice steady again. He'll want me to ask why me before I ask what now. Don't give him the pleasure. Mason nodded once, not trusting his voice. Patel, braver with numbers than ghosts, focused on instruments, still shadowing. 8 o'clock low, range fluctuating. He's playing just outside TCAS teeth. Copy, Kamara said. Let's paint a line he doesn't like to cross. She keyed the radio, tone flat. Traffic 8 o'clock, 2 miles. Identify or divert. Static. Then the faintest chuckle, softer than before. But there. Mason hissed through his teeth. He's laughing? He's checking range. And nerve, Kamara said. Both of ours. She leaned to the overhead, toggled a light angle to throw their profile off a hair. Patel, scrub 5 knots, 1 degree right, make it lazy. The returns danced. The rogue danced with them. Still there, Patel said. Good, Kamara murmured. Stay predictable, until we don't. Heather's voice was hoarse from 100 variants of please remain seated. But the cabin obeyed better now. Not because faith had blossomed, but because fear had learned there were worse things than waiting. Still, she could feel it building in little pockets, the crackle of conspiracy rising like static in a fleece blanket. Gregory Shaw, chastened for a moment by the motion of the aircraft and the chorus of glares he'd earned, had retreated into a tight, muttering authority. He checked his watch with the urgency of a man who believed time owed him apologies. He tapped his phone like it owed him bars. He stared at the cockpit door as if he could will it to become transparent and prove him right. Halfway down the cabin, the older woman who'd noticed the whisperer earlier kept watching. The young man, dark hoodie, soft jaw, had tucked whatever device he'd been murmuring into beneath his thigh. His leg jiggled, then went still whenever Heather walked by. He didn't pray, he didn't blink much either. She unbuckled just long enough to catch Heather's sleeve as the attendant passed. That boy, she whispered. Back row, left. He was talking into something, not a phone. Heather followed the glance. The boy looked up at exactly the wrong time. Their eyes snared each other for a heartbeat. He dropped his gaze too fast. Thank you, Heather said, moving on. She thumbed the interphone. Captain, passenger report of suspicious activity. Aft left, I'll check. Copy, Mason said, voice low. Be cautious. Heather squared her shoulders the way people do when they have to be larger than fear would prefer. She started down the aisle, breath as steady as she could make it. Your hands, Mason said quietly, eyes still on the yoke. They're steady, even when you said his name without saying it. Kamara allowed herself half a smile. Hands learn to tell the truth when mouths get punished for it. Mason flicked a glance at her, grateful and something else. Why did you leave? He regretted the question as soon as it cleared the air. If that's not... It is, she said, and somehow there was no sting in admitting it. I left because I loved the sky more than I loved arguing with rooms that didn't, because I kept being the first, and first always felt like probation. She breathed once. Because I lost a friend and got blamed for surviving. Patel swallowed. I'm sorry. She nodded without looking back. I used to tell myself that if I ever heard dare again, I'd let someone else answer. Funny, the things we promise when we think the past can't find our flight number. Mason adjusted trim by a hair. You don't have to do this alone. You did the hardest part, she said. You asked for help into a PA you knew would judge you for it. He huffed a laugh that almost sounded like a human unspooling. Passengers aren't the only ones who think captains are supposed to be stone. Stone sinks, she said softly. Steel bends and keeps its shape. Be steel. The rogue came back into view. Just a smear at the window's edge, then a quick glint as it crossed a brighter patch of sky. The proximity chime flirted with warning and settled for nagging. Patel called range like a metronome. 2 miles, 1.8, 2.1. He's sitting in our blind, Kamara said, waiting for a roll he can surf. So we don't roll. Mason said. Oh, we will, she murmured, but not when he's asked. She keyed the mic again. Traffic bearing 8 o'clock, 1.8. Last call. Identify or divert. We will maneuver. Silence. Then the hiss again, softer, like someone smiling with their teeth together. Okay, she said. Now he's bored. Bored? Patel blinked. That's worse? Bored pilots don't leave, Kamara said. They escalate. Heather reached the suspect row and crouched to knee height, practicing the smile you use when you don't want people to notice you're cataloguing their hands. Hey there, she said to the boy. How you holding up? He nodded too fast. Fine. Where's your phone? She asked, airy like small talk. He blinked. Dead. Ah. She watched his knee. No jiggle now. Too still. She tilted her head to the aisle, as if looking for something over his shoulder, then snapped her eyes back to his hands, a flash of dark plastic tucked more deeply under thigh. Mind if I grab that bottle for you? She asked, pointing to the floor behind his foot. He shifted just enough to clear her path. The object under his leg tapped the seat frame with the soft clack of custom plastic. Not a phone. She straightened. Thank you, she said, voice unchanged. Then she stepped 3 rows forward, thumbed the interphone low. Captain, device confirmed, aft left. Not a phone. He's guarding it. I need guidance. Do not escalate, Mason said, jaw tight. We're tail high on adrenaline already. Kamara added. Box him with kindness. Find a reason to relocate him. We may need eyes on that device. Heather nodded to the air no one saw and turned back with a different smile, the one you reserve for skittish animals and proud men. Sir, we have a seat closer to the galley for people who need a little more help. Can I offer it? Free drinks, extra blankets? Suspicion crossed the boy's face like a shadow. I'm fine. I know, Heather said. Conspiratorial. But there's a family back here with twins, and they're a little loud. Thought you might love a quieter spot. He hesitated, then shrugged. Okay. He stood carefully, thigh glued to whatever he'd been guarding. Heather held the aisle like a hostess and watched his profile as he walked. No jingle from a phone, no bounce from keys, shoulders too square for a scared kid. He wasn't praying. The rogue's voice came again, this time cleaner, as if he'd decided to stop pretending the equipment was the problem. Ghost. The cockpit flinched as one organism. Mason's eyes shot to Kamara's. Patel's mouth thinned to paper. Kamara didn't give the syllable more power than it already had. You have my attention, she said, keying the mic with a motion that looked lazy but wasn't. Now buy what you want with plain speech. The voice chuckled. Silk over razors. You left the sky, Ghost. Thought it would leave you too. State intentions, Kamara said. Or clear my air. Your air. He laughed again. Genuine delight this time. There it is. The old spine. Mason hissed a whisper out of the side of his mouth. How does he know you're... He read my file, she said, still into the mic, as if talking to Mason would feed dare. Everyone knows how to steal dossiers now. Requesting intentions, Patel added, trying to shove procedure between two people who spoke in history. Say again, identify. Silence. Then, I am here for the ghost. The rest of you are chorus. Mason's throat worked. We are not part of anyone's show. You'll do as audience, the voice purred. The blip surged. The proximity chime changed. Nag turned to scold. 1.5 miles. 1.3. He's closing, Patel said. Not a question. He wants a paint transfer, Kamara said. Wants to kiss our wingtip and go home with the story. Will that kill us? Mason asked. If he sneezes, she said. If we blink. I am not blinking, he muttered. Good, she said. Then hear me. On my mark, I want a 3-degree right, throttle scrub, then a snap back left as if you're correcting a drift. It'll shake him off the surf. If he's lazy, he'll overshoot. And if he's not lazy, then we change the game. Mason nodded. A pilot's prayer. Call it. She waited. Felt the tug in her bones that told her where his nose would be before the scope did. Saw the vector, not the dot. Mark. Mason moved. The 737 obeyed with the reluctant grace of large creatures asked to dance. The rogue's return bobbled, corrected, then drifted half a hair out of the pocket he'd been comfortable in. Patel released a breath that belonged to a different man. We shook him. For 3 seconds, Kamara said. He's learning. Heather guided the boy toward row 8 with a blanket and a practiced kindness. At row 9, a woman grabbed her wrist. Is it over? She begged. Is he gone? Heather looked toward the windows where nothing and everything lives. Not yet. It was the most honest thing she could say. Gregory had gone quiet, only because his voice had eaten itself raw. He sat with his hands templed like a cartoon prayer, eyes closed, then snapped them open, as if remembering he wore a mask of reason. He stood, sat, stood again. A murmur traveled the left side like a wind through grass. There. Do you see it? There. Several phones rose at once. Shaky frames caught a glint, then a shape, then a terrifying proximity as the rogue surged up along their quarter and hung there, predator pacing captive. Children's heads down, someone shouted, and 100 parents suddenly remembered their bodies existed to shield. The rogue dipped, flashed its belly again, closer. In the cockpit, Mason's hand trembled once. He set it down, picked it up calmer. You said be steel, he murmured. And you are, Kamara said. Stone cracks when the water finds a seam. Steel flexes and holds. He nodded. Talk me through the next 30 seconds. We give him a picture of incompetence, she said. Then we take it away. Meaning? Let the autopilot trip again. Ride the shudder. Then hand fly back to a steadier line than he expects. When he moves to exploit the wobble closes behind him. He'll be offset. Mason allowed himself to grin, humor dry as altitude. You're mean. I've been called worse. Ready, Patel said. Trip it, Kamara ordered. Mason flicked the switch. The autopilot chirped, rolled a degree, hunted. The rogue slid in like a hand aiming for a pocket. Mason took the yoke back with that ounce touch he'd relearned and restabilized before the intruder could finish the steel. The scope blinked. 1 mile, 1.1, then a stagger to 1.5. He flinched, Patel said. He thought we did, Kamara corrected. There's a difference. Heather eased the boy into the new seat. There we go, she said. Can I get you water? He nodded too quickly. Yes. She reached, then dropped a napkin. Clumsy me. She bent to retrieve it, and in one motion so practiced it didn't look like a motion at all, glanced under the seat as the boy shifted his leg. The device flat, matte, no visible brand, antenna stub the size of a pen cap. Not homemade, not common. Her stomach did the thing muscle memory does when training recognizes an outline you saw once in a slide deck you hope to forget. Passive repeater or band-hopping relay. Nothing that should be on a commercial flight. She stood with the water. Here you go. He took it with a hand that didn't shake. She offered a smile with teeth. I'll grab you a snack. She moved toward the galley and the interphone with the deliberate walk of someone who knows the cabin is a pond and panic is ripples. She kept her face calm because faces are oxygen masks for other faces. Captain, she whispered into the handset. We have a device. Looks like comms. He's repositioned. I can't take it without a scene. Copy, Mason said. Stand by. Kamara added. Get a photo if you can. No confrontation. Not yet. Understood. The radio clicked again. Ghost, the rogue breathed, more intimate now. You still fly like you never left. Then you know how this ends, she said. With you bored and me busy. A low laugh. It ends when you come outside. Negative. Mason snapped into the mic before he could stop himself. You will not. The voice cut him off with a softness that made Kamara's skin crawl. I wasn't talking to you. And then the rogue dropped. The scope went bright and loud, the proximity alarm shedding politeness entirely. The shadow rolled from their 9 o'clock down across their 7, cutting a path that would take him under their belly and up the far side in a split S that had put more than one hot hand into a story he couldn't afford to tell twice. Passengers saw it too, a blade falling under their windows, then gone. Screams tore at the cabin as if lungs could slow jets. Heather braced one palm against the ceiling and another on a seat back, eyes closing just long enough to swallow her own. Talk to me, Mason said, voice a wire. Kamara's eyes were already 3 seconds ahead. He'll come up our right high. He wants the sunlight behind him, so the cabin sees nothing until he's over us. Counter. We change the rhythm. How? We go first. She didn't wait for agreement. 3 right. Shallow, then a 2-degree pitch up on my roll. Now. Mason moved. The 737 responded like a great animal, asked for a new trick. The rogue appeared where she predicted. Right side, high, but found the angle he'd wanted already occupied. The near miss was still near enough to yank a ragged sound from 100 throats, but he didn't get his kiss. The alarms screamed their approval or disapproval. It was hard to tell which through the noise. Again Patel croaked. He's angry, Kamara said. Good. The radio proved her right. Ghost, the voice hissed, veneer cracked. Don't make me come inside. Mason's eyes cut to the cabin camera feed, a fisheye view of rows of faces drawn into an icon of fear. Inside how? He demanded. Kamara didn't have time to answer. The scope lit like a storm. The rogue pulled vertical at their 3 o'clock, slid behind their tail, and dived with a hunger that set every warning into chorus. Brace, she said, too quietly for anyone but the cockpit to hear. The dive was a promise this time, not a game. Alert, alert. The proximity system sang, stacking tones into panic. Kamara's hand flattened on her thigh, the old ritual locking the present into place. On my mark, she said, we will not be where he expects us to be. The dive was merciless. The rogue aircraft cut down from the clouds, nose angled like a spear, every passenger in the 737 watching death fall toward them at 600 knots. The proximity alarms wailed, layering shrill over shrill, until it was impossible to tell machine from human scream. Collision course, Patel shouted, voice cracking. Hold steady, Kamara ordered, her tone the only solid ground in the storm. The passengers weren't steady. Phones clattered, prayers tangled, children cried. Heather clung to the intercom, words stumbling out in broken rhythm. Bryce, Bryce, fall. And then Mason hauled the yoke left at Kamara's call, the 737 banking wide, metal groaning like it hated survival. The rogue shot under their belly, missing them by what felt like inches, disappearing into the shadow of cloud. For a heartbeat, the cabin was silent, stunned. Then it broke. They're trying to kill us, a woman shrieked in row 21, clawing at her seatbelt. We're going down, a man bellowed. Phones streamed shaky footage, captions in real time. Another plane almost hit us, hijack in progress. This flight is cursed. Gregory Shaw shot to his feet, voice hoarse but loud. Do you see now? She's up there flying us straight into a trap. His face was crimson, eyes wild. We need control of this plane back before she kills us all. Passengers murmured, some nodding, some shouting him down. The division cut the cabin into jagged halves. Fear doesn't vote. It chooses sides with whatever keeps the heart beating. Heather slammed him with a glare that should have burned. Sit down before you get us all killed. But Gregory only jabbed a finger at the cockpit door. If we survive, it won't be because of her. It'll be in spite of her. The instruments still screamed, lights flashing in furious rhythm. Mason's breath came ragged, but his hands held steady. Patel rattled off altitudes like a man clinging to sanity by numbers. 3,000 drop, rapid climb. He's trying to bleed our margin. He's tightening the box, Kamara said, eyes never leaving the scope, keeping us too busy with him to see what else might be coming. Mason shot her a look. Else? You think there's more than one? Kamara didn't answer immediately. She saw the shadow, the way it played, too bold, too rehearsed. There's always backup, she said finally. The radio crackled alive, the same voice, smoother now, taunting. Ghost, you always knew how to dance. Let's see if you can still bleed. Mason's hand tightened on the yoke. Who is this guy? Kamara's jaw clenched. A ghost from a war the public never got to read about. Back in the cabin, Heather's eyes caught movement. The boy she'd relocated, the one guarding the hidden device, slipped a hand under his hoodie. His leg jittered as he hunched low, lips moving again. The older woman who'd first noticed him gasped. He's doing it again. A chorus rose. Passengers twisted in their seats, shouting, What's he hiding? Search him. He's with them. Heather's stomach dropped. Chaos inside, chaos outside. It was a double front war. Stay calm, she yelled, pushing toward the boy. Stay in your seats. But Gregory pounced on the moment. See? I told you. There's a mole among us. And you think it's a coincidence she's up there while he's down here? Open your eyes. Suspicion leapt like fire from seat to seat, until even those who defended Kamara looked shaken. Alarms shrieked again. Patel's voice cracked. Range .9, he's on us. Out the left windows the rogue reappeared, rolling into formation so tight the passengers could see the rivets on its wings. Gasps rattled the cabin as the fighter shadowed them wingtip to wingtip, its nose angled just slightly toward their fuselage like a wolf pressing teeth to a jugular, not yet biting. Children cried harder. A man shouted a prayer in Arabic. Phones captured every frame. Mason's hands shook against the yoke. He's too close, if I so much as twitch. Then don't twitch, Kamara said firmly. Hold steady, let him commit first. The Rogue waggled its wings once. A pilot's taunt. A wave meant only for her. He knows I'm here, Kamara murmured. The Rogue slipped back, then surged forward in a burst of speed that shoved shockwaves against their fuselage. The 737 rattled like a toy in a child's angry hands. Bins popped again, luggage spilling. Passengers screamed, covering their heads. Heather's voice cracked on the intercom. "Remain seated. Seatbelts on, please," Gregory shouted over her. "She's provoking him. We'll all die because of her." And in the cockpit, Mason broke. "What does he want, Kamara?" She didn't flinch. "Me. He won't stop until I give him that." Patel paled. "You can't mean—" The radio hissed again, Dare's voice curling like smoke. "Come outside, Ghost, or I'll tear your audience apart piece by piece." The alarms screamed agreement as the Rogue banked away, circling for another dive. In the cockpit, Kamara gripped the edge of her seat, eyes narrowing on the scope. "He's not just playing anymore, he's hunting." And then Patel's voice cracked into a scream. "Collision warning, he's diving again." The cockpit filled with the shrill crescendo of alarms. The Rogue streaked toward them like a bullet loosed from the clouds, and for the first time, even Captain Mason whispered what everyone else was already thinking. "This is it." The alarms stacked into a single shriek, the sound of the sky screaming. "T-ass. Traffic, traffic," the machine barked. "Hold," Kamara said. Calm, clipped, eyes forward. The Rogue fell out of cloud in a knife-edge dive, vapor tearing off its wingtips. Passengers saw it, one streak of steel and intent, and the cabin detonated into prayer and panic. Heather threw her forearm across the nearest headrest and braced. 3 aisles back, the older woman who had clocked the suspicious boy pulled a child under her arm and put her back to the window like human armor. "Climb, climb," TCS commanded. "Negative," Kamara answered, "to the box and to death. He wants us up." "Then what?" Mason's voice was wire-thin. "We go where he won't, through." Her palm pressed flat to her thigh. "Old ritual, new war. On my mark, 1 degree push, 2 right. Give him a pocket he thinks he owns, then we take it away." The Rogue swelled in the glass, the world narrowing to a bright, impossible point. "Mark." Mason moved. The 737 dipped a whisper, rolled a breath right. The Rogue lunged for the seam. "Now back." Mason snapped left and leveled. The big airliner slid sideways just enough that the fighter's nose sliced past their tail in a furious blur, shockwaves buffeting the cabin like a giant's hand. 100 throats made the same involuntary sound, the one bodies make when they found out they're still alive. Clear of conflict, Tikas decided a beat later, suddenly polite again. Patel let out air that didn't know it had been held. He missed. "No," Kamara said, eyes already hunting the scope. "We didn't." In the cabin, chaos tried to reassemble. Gregory Shaw staggered into the aisle, grabbing at seatbacks. "You see?" he shouted, voice raw. "She's provoking him." Heather stepped into him as if he were turbulence. "Sit down." The words landed like buckles clicking. He flinched, sat. She didn't wait for thanks. 2 rows forward, the boy with the hidden device hunched low again, thumb worrying a recessed switch. The older woman flicked her gaze toward Heather, now. Heather clocked it, nodded once, then lifted the interphone to her mouth without taking her eyes off the boy. "Captain," she breathed. "The device is live. He's transmitting or hopping bands." Kamara's brain slotted a piece. "That's why the Rogue's range calls are so clean," she said. "He's got a local helper." Mason swore under his breath. "We have to shut it down." "Not yet," Kamara said. "If we swat it now, we tip our hand. Box him first, then cut the wire." The radio crackled. "Still got it, Ghost," the voice purred, softer than before, still teaching school on a bus. "State intentions," Kamara replied, bored. "Last call." "You're my intention," he said. "You always were." Patel's eyes flicked up, then back to instruments. "Range 2.3. He's offset high, starboard. He's going vertical to dump speed," Kamara said. "He'll scissor down our right and try to park there." Mason swallowed. "Counter?" "We play dumb," she said. "Trip the autopilot. Let the wobble invite him. Then we hand-fly steady as glass and step him long." Mason's finger hovered over the switch. "On your trip." The 737 hunted a degree. The Rogue dropped into their wobble like a hawk into a rabbit run. Mason took hold again with ounces, not pounds, pinning the big jet in a truer line than its size should allow. The scope blinked. 1.8, 2.2. Stepped, Patel said. Wonder under the numbers. Copy, Kamara said. He'll get angry now. As if on cue, the proximity chime deepened. Not closer, but smarter. The rogues slid behind their tail just far enough to harass the air the 7037 needed to breathe. The ride went ugly. The tail shimmied. The cabin shook. A soft chorus of wretches rose and fell. Heather moved row to row with sick bags and steady eyes, the practiced choreography of someone who has decided to be the hinge the room swings on. Make him pick a side, Kamara said. Tiny, you're right. Deprive the wake of the consistency he needs. Mason nudged. The shimmy eased. Not gone, but less malicious. He hates that, Patel said, a small, surprised smile at the corner of his mouth. Good, Kamara replied. He can file a complaint. The boy with the device shifted again. Heather saw the switch, the antenna stub wink. Her mind flipped through training slides, band hop, relay, IMSI, and picked a plan she could hold in two hands. She knelt at the row in front of him and accidentally spilled a cup of water, the arc a neat parabola onto the carpet beneath his feet. I am so sorry, she gushed, already blotting. Don't move. Water and electronics are a bad mix. Instinct won. He lifted his thigh away from the seat frame to avoid the spill. Heather slid a folded blanket under, and with that motion, a practiced flick of fingers gathered the device into terry cloth. She smiled, bright and blameless. Let me grab you a dry blanket. He realized a beat too late. Hey! Heather held his gaze, kept her voice honey. I'll bring it right back. She moved. He started to rise. 3 passengers who'd been watching snapped belts across their laps and shook their heads. Tiny, decisive no. The older woman cleared her throat with grandmother thunder. The boy sat. Heather didn't run. She walked like a woman with good news, cradling a blanket-shaped secret, and vanished into the galley. Captain, she whispered into the interphone. Device secured. Mason sagged an inch. Copy. Good work, Kamara said. Wrap it in foil if you can find any. Heather smiled, faint. We have lasagna. Perfect, Kamara said. And somehow it made sense. Range 1.4, Patel said. He's back on our quarter. The radio hissed, then whispered like a lover with a knife. Come outside, Ghost. I tire of teaching the class. Request you divert, Kamara said. Last transmission. Or what? He asked, amused. Or I make you, she said, finally letting a sliver of the steel into her tone. Silence. Then a hum, the sound of a decision hardening. He came again, low and fast along their left, a scythe of vapor curling off his wings. The alarms went savage. Descend, descend, climb, climb. Conflicting advisories fighting with physics. Ignore TCAS, Kamara said. He's spoofing its brain with his geometry. Mason's jaw jumped. Talk to me. On my mark, Tiny unload, then roll 2 left like you sneezed. He'll over-anticipate and commit. We'll give him air he can't use. Mark. Wait, Mark. They moved. The 737 obeyed, a cathedral of aluminum performing a pirouette it had no right to pull off. The fighter slid into the pocket too soon and found nothing. He flared, wobbled, corrected. Their wingtip missed his nose by a schoolyard rumor. The cabin screamed, then stunned quiet. Range 2.9, Patel said, almost laughing. He's embarrassed. The radio was quiet for the first time. Then a single word, stripped of charm. Enough. Kamara's neck prickled. He's changing plan. How? Mason asked. From theater, she said, to punishment. An ATC chime broke through, tinny and overtaxed. Flight 327, ATC. We are receiving 7500 on your transponder. Confirm. Mason blanched. Hijack code. We didn't. Kamara's mind leapt. The device. The repeater spoofed our squawk. ATC. Negative. Mason snapped. We did not set 70. Static then. Be advised. Intercept declared. Stand by for military escort. Patel went paper white. They'll treat us as the threat. If they see us maneuver with the rogue on our wing, Kamara said. Yes. Then what? Mason asked. Hands off and pray. Then we end the duet before the chorus arrives, Kamara said. We make him leave. How? We take away the one thing he has left. Certainty. She tightened her harness. The gesture changed the air in the cockpit. Mason looked at her, understanding dawning. You're going to throw a move he can't mirror. I'm going to throw one I shouldn't, she said, and make him think I'm reckless. Patel stared. In a 737. In a 737, she said. Steel, not stone. Heather's whisper bled in. We're hearing fighter jets inbound on a stream. Is that? It is, Kamara said. Keep everyone seated. Captain, she said quietly. On my mark, we unload to the edge and paint a line he will not cross. Will the airframe take it? Mason asked. It'll complain, she said. It'll live. He nodded. Call it. The rogue's voice slid in one last time, trying to land a cut. Say goodbye, Ghost. Kamara didn't touch the mic. She watched the vector, not the dot. Saw where he'd be, not where he was. Mark! Mason pushed. The 737 dropped her nose a breath outside polite, the lift vector slewing, the world tilting into a move no handbook would bless. The fighter committed. The interceptors closed, and every alarm in the aircraft blossomed into a single unified scream. The alarms screamed in unison. The rogue jet dropped from the sky, nose locked on their fuselage, intent clear. This time there would be no warning pass. Mason's knuckles whitened on the yoke. Patel's voice cracked through the chaos. Collision course. But Kamara's voice cut through steady as steel. Hold! Don't fight him where he expects you. On my mark, pitch shallow, roll right, then snap back left. We give him a hole he can't climb out of. The rogue closed fast. The cabin full of shrieks and prayers. Heather braced against the galley wall, eyes shut, whispering the same word over and over. Please, please, please. Mark! Mason moved. The 737 dipped, rolled, steadied, an airliner dancing like a fighter under impossible command. The rogue committed, too confident, too close, and overshot. He streaked past their wingtip, missed his line, and vanished into the clouds in a desperate climb. The cockpit alarms stuttered, then fell silent. Only the engines hummed. Only the world breathed. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the entire cabin exploded into sound. Cheers, sobs, clapping, people hugging strangers. Phones fell as hands found each other, desperate to prove they were still alive. Heather grabbed the intercom, her voice cracking. We are safe, we are safe. Gregory Shaw sat frozen in 14B, face pale, lips trembling. The words he had thrown at Kamara all flight long had turned to ash. He opened his mouth, closed it, and lowered his head. Captain Mason pressed the PA button, his voice still shaky but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to know something. The person who just saved your lives, who kept this plane in the sky when none of us could, was Captain Kamara Johnson. The cabin erupted again, louder this time. Passengers chanted her name. Some cried openly. One man whispered, "Thank you, God, for her." And in the cockpit, Kamara sat still, hands folded, eyes forward, her face unreadable. She hadn't come here for applause. She came here because the sky asked her to. 2 Air Force escorts flanked them down to the runway, their presence a promise that nothing else would come close. As the 737's wheels touched down and roared against the asphalt, cheers rose again, shaking the fuselage harder than turbulence ever could. When the engines wound down and the plane rolled to a halt, the passengers rose unsteady, as if testing the ground beneath their feet. And then the door opened. Phones rose instantly as Kamara stepped out of the aircraft into the floodlights of the runway. Wind pulled her hair back, her hoodie loose around her shoulders. No words, no explanations, just her presence, walking down the airstairs like a figure carved out of resolve. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, she simply walked, silent, steady, while behind her 200 people cried her name. The cameras caught it all. The woman they doubted. The black woman they whispered against. The woman they said didn't look like a pilot. The black woman proved them all wrong. And so the story of Flight 327 would live forever, not as a tragedy but as a testimony, that in the moment of greatest fear, when prejudice shouted louder than reason, when death dove from the clouds, one black woman stood and flew. Thank you for watching till the end. Let me know what part you enjoyed the most. If this story gripped you, don't go yet. Subscribe so you don't miss other stories like this.